So we're at NAB right now, 2018 in Las Vegas. I'm Gavin Farrell from Panogs,
I'm Stephen Burt from ATI.
and we're here at the wonderful Zcam booth to showcase and introduce the VR drone to the world. And basically, the VR drone is a solution to kind of a conundrum that Panogs has had over the last 5 years. So typically when we have clients that shoot 360 video work, we typically have a drone that just has a pole and then a 360 camera that hangs from the bottom of it. I'm sure your audience is all familiar with that. We have the Tarzan G, we have all different kinds of stabilizers, but the camera always has to hang so far below the drone so that you can clone out the drone from the shot. Now that inherently has some issues, because if you're on a cloudy day, or you have clouds that are moving, or if you have birds that go over the drone, or a plane that goes over the drone, you have to just remove that from the shot. You can't even use the footage sometimes. This actually solves that issue, because you have a top camera and a bottom camera, and you can choose which content you want to pull from. In this situation, we're pulling from both cameras, and when we stitch the two VR cameras together, the drone magically removes itself from the shot. On top of that, this drone is in-air stabilized, which means once we land and pull the footage, we can stitch it immediately, and we don't have to run it through any Mocha VR stabilization or all the other types of synthized stabilization. It's already stabilized. The other cool thing is that applications like, we can do low flights in stadiums, we can do low flights in interiors, we can do down in a river and ravine, and we can have all the content that we're capturing above as well.
So we've been building these drones commercially for about 10 years and trying to shoot VR for about 7 years with them. And Gavin listed a number of the inherent problems from a shooter and a post-production side, but there are also serious problems with the airframe and the ability of the drone to carry these cameras. So what we did was, instead of putting a gimbal or a camera onto the drone, we started by building a stabilization system on the center of gravity and then built the drone around it. What that does is it puts our entire payload system right on the center of gravity of the drone, so that as the drone flies, it doesn't have to work as hard to move those cameras through space, and creates a single axis by which they're fully stabilized, and then gives Gavin and his company an easy way of removing the drone from the image, eliminating the need for post-processing and stabilization.
Yeah.
And as an ancillary benefit, what we found is by doing this type of stabilization on the center of gravity, we increase the agility and the flight performance, the endurance, and the wind tolerance of the drone, because it's not working as hard to stabilize those cameras. So there's been a whole host of problems that were solved by moving the gimbal onto the center of gravity and doing it this way.
Yeah, and a couple more things to add. We ran this problem that we wanted to solve came about because our main client is the Space Needle. And if you know about the Space Needle, when we launch a drone from the Space Needle, all the content that we want is the tower above us, right? So we actually need priority to the top camera. We need to get more information out of the top cameras. Most drone operators have the big VR camera on the bottom, and they put a single camera pointing straight up, so they're only getting a small resolution. In this case, we're getting a higher resolution from the top camera. The other thing to mention is that we really like the Zcam S1s because they're only 1.5 pounds, so it's only 3-pound payload. However, this airframe can actually handle any VR camera system as long as you have 2 of the same cameras. Ideally, you want cameras that have a synced array, and so Zcam's announced the new the V2, I believe it is, or the E2. And that has a synchronized module. So our goal is to eventually have VR camera systems that are all synchronized with global shutter.
To add to that real briefly, the design is very scalable. So for this system, it's optimized as a hexacopter to fly these cameras, but we can also build it out as an octocopter or even a dodecacopter with up to 12 motors, so for increased flight time and power. So as the VR cameras grow in size and weight, the design is scalable both up and down to either fit a smaller consumer camera or the higher end professional cameras.
Exactly.
This is custom built, and we're just displaying it for the first time. We're going to be selling this drone for $7,500. It also comes with retractable landing gear, so as we launch, the landing gear will come up out of the shot, giving you a full unobstructed view from the bottom and the top.
Yeah. So imagine a smaller version of this with GoPro Fusions or Garmin Verbs, 2 Garmin Verbs, one on the bottom, one on the top. Imagine a larger version with maybe the the V1 or V2 or the larger stereoscopic rigs. Also, if you wanted to do night shots, you could do 2 S1 Pros on the rig. The downside with S1 Pros is that it only shoots at 30 frames per second, but if you were doing kind of a stationary night shot over a stadium, that would work just fine. We have found the S1 Pros to be sort of our favorite combination because they're lightweight and we get a nice stitch out of a 60 frames per second setting.
There's also all the fun little features that people have gotten used to with the DJI, and the more popular drones are all accessible through this very, very dynamic waypoint, autonomous flight navigation, FPV, video downlink, return to home function. So all the things people have gotten used to from the DJI systems have been incorporated this into a more open source way. So it has a lot of functionality and a lot of capabilities that are even beyond what some of the DJI drones are doing.